Stefan Burns with us today. Wow, this is a great treat for me. I've been following you for a long time, Stefan. You cover solar activity, space weather, planetary alignments, geophysical energetic events so that we may better all understand the quality of the energetics of the solar system and the Earth. And you believe that this helps in the spiritual and conscious evolution journey. And also you discuss health and wellness topics like earthing and grounding. You sell products to help everyone stay healthy, happy, aligned with their soul mission. It's all about resonance. And you're a great cosmic bro. I love watching your show. I watch your show so much that my wife is like, can we watch something else?
Oh no.
Yeah.
She's probably right.
Yeah, I'm obsessed because I really believe in all this stuff. I love your multidisciplinary approach to this. I've never seen anybody do it on this level. So, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Yeah, I mean I try to not hog the camera or anything when I'm doing my presentations because there's a certain element with if you're just in general like a showman, like a presenter, you can start to steer it towards you. And you see a lot of people get stuck in that. And I do people want to kind of get to know you a little bit. But in general, it's like, what's the data? What's the facts? What's the cool download? What are the cool connections? And so that's really my focus. And nice. So last night was a fantastic example because we had this huge explosion on the far side of the sun, just rotated off to the minute with a magnitude 6.9 earthquake that struck Chile in the subduction trench there, like to the minute.
Incredible.
And that's the first big earthquake that South America has had since, it's been at least a year and a half. We looked at it in the live stream and everything. But for some reason, most scientists or whatever, they're like, coincidence. It's always just a coincidence. But we've had this happen so many times now. And that's just one example of how these things are connected. And there was also a crazy planetary geometry that was active at that time. We had what's known as a kite formation. So you had Pluto, or let me get it in frame, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus, like all in this kind of triangle shape. It's called a trine. And then you had the moon make this exact point up top. So it looks like a kite. And the lunar geometry, of course, can only do that once every month, every 28 days, because that's the lunar cycle. For the outer planets to be in that configuration is very rare. And the fact that also is exactly precise when this occurred speaks to not only a Sun-Earth connection, but a Sun-Earth-planet connection. So these are the things that we cover. And I'm not surprised that you find it interesting because it is. This is like what connects all of us together.
Yeah. Fantastic. And so I kind of have tuned in for, decades now on the energetics of the Earth. I've been predicting some of the events that have happened in the past and kind of help everybody, get connected with that is one of the things that you do. So I'm kind of coming at it from maybe a 2 or 3 dimensional type of, environment. Multidimensional type, but you are covering much more. You're taking the sun in account. I think that's been fantastic. Very accurate in the projection of what might occur. From a really big solar storm, solar activity that's happening. You've been covering that really well.
Yeah, I basically keep finding new layers and depths to this because I started, if you go back earlier, like when I was in Boy Scouts, I was always interested in being outside. And then when I went to school, originally I was going to major in history, but then I took a geology class and I was like, this is a lot of fun. Wow. And of course, doing the geology classes and like the field camps and stuff really kind of cemented it. And then what happened is through my 2 jobs that I like kind of my normal career, 2 jobs I had after college, I just felt increasingly this need to research more because my understanding was very limited. So it started off with me diving into Schumann resonances, which are Earth's naturally resonant energy fields. And those are crazy, and they still are crazy because they connect to us in our brain waves and all this stuff. If there's one thing to like research into that connects everything else, that's probably them, and that's where I was kind of intuitively guided. But then that led into solar activity and space weather, because I had to start. These solar maximum was starting to build up, and there's lots of connections between space weather and Schumann resonances. So then I started to get into that. Then I had to really go take a deep dive into earthquakes and volcanoes. Obviously, I had some study experience with that through school, but like, let's really bring it up now to speed. And then all these other things filled in, like astrology, astronomy, whatever, because I'm pretty open-minded, so I'm not thrown off by, I really don't care what other people think. So if 99% of the world is like, astrology is bogus, but I feel that there's something there, it doesn't dissuade me from
Well, of course,
researching into it.
the elites use it, and it used to be used by people up until around the 1500s, and then it started to be suppressed. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's some of us are getting back to that. So I that's another aspect that you bring in that I enjoy quite a bit too. Good job.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff there. There's probably a little bit too much baggage with some of the modern systems like Western Tropical, but regardless, you see some of these people in very high positions of power,
Hmm.
tech companies, individuals, governments, and they're clearly using it because they're
They're,
lining things up on very specific transit dates
yeah.
that are very important. So it's like, okay, if I mean, yeah. So there's a lot there. So basically, I just started to. And then my way of really learning is by creating a presentation, a video, some sort of end deliverable product. Because someone who can teach something is probably someone that actually knows it.
Hmm.
So that was my way of kind of cementing in my mind this information. And so I haven't been doing this that long, which is why it's great to connect to people like you who have had this interest in this for decades now.
Yeah.
And we've gone about it different ways. But there's also undoubtedly a component to this journey of just skin in the game, how much time you've been kind of looking into and feeling into these things. And if a big event happened in 2011 and you saw that unfold in real time, then that gives you that imprint and you know that's significant. Whereas I may not find out about it until I stumble upon that big earthquake or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's an important aspect too, for sure. It's just tracking it often and tracking it for a long time.
Yeah, and I love your your cosmic journey aspect of it as well, because there was a we just had a Chilean earthquake, fairly significant. So anywhere else it probably would have been major, but there, they get such big ones. It's like a yawn almost. But there was several, well over a decade ago. There was one that was well into the nines, and if you look back in time, there was a massive from that. There was a pretty good tsunami that hit Hawaii after that and caused a lot of death. So I was with a group that we used to do. Uh, we used to look at these things and put our energy into it, meditate on it, or send it prayers or whatever. And that's what we did with this. And we were kind of calming it. I remember, taking my consciousness into the waves and so forth, or the energy that was, moving out, and calming it down. And sure enough, when it did finally hit Hawaii, it was almost nothing. So if you look at the past, it should have been, the same. So the cosmic journey is very important, I think, and I think we're raising our consciousness, and I think you're just, right there with all this, helping people awaken, to all the different aspects that, can really influence us. And we in turn can influence those aspects as well.
Yeah, that's an important aspect. I feel like, I mean, it wasn't my intention starting off to hold sound healing meditations because there's a tsunami coming or something. But effectively, it's like you start tracking this and then you start getting a following, and it's like, well, it's the least you could do because it's only going to help. And if people are anxious, and there's a lot of people out there with anxiety and all these things, and it's good to help. And we have it, at times. It's just a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So I did that last year for the magnitude 8.8 megaquake. And this is maybe what you're referencing with Hawaii. That was Kamchatka, Russia. that we were expecting the tsunami to hit Hawaii,
Yeah.
and the prior magnitude 9 from the same location hit Hawaii in 1952, I believe, and that was actually fairly significant.
Yeah.
So the energy released from an 8.8, it's only about half of a magnitude 9, but still big event.
Yeah.
But the tsunami did come in, but it wasn't destructive, and you can't outright dismiss the fact that in 2025 there were tens of thousands of people around the world praying, meditating, if not even hundreds of thousands, to ameliorate that effect and just to basically calm everything down. Whereas in 1950, you didn't have the internet and things like this. So basically, people found out when it hit. So, those of us that are cognizant of this and we happen to be aware of it, like when it's happening live, I think I really see this as a responsibility for us to do these things. And so for that live stream for Hawaii, I first covered the earthquake, and then there's like a couple hours before I had to jump on a live stream again for the tsunami watch for Hawaii. But we had, I think, about 20,000 people for that one. So clearly people also want to help too. They want a focus point to help.
Wow, that's incredible. And I didn't know that you did that. So that probably had an impact.
I hope
And
so.
I think people should, take that on board and realize that we can have an impact, and that's one of the things you're doing. So the planetary alignments that you're going into, astrology of it, and then the sun activity, and then we're it seems like we're moving up intensity. I would say that maybe this year, I'm not going to say for sure, but from what I've been seeing and what I've been feeling, it seems like we're going to get even more significant events, or maybe events this year than we did last year.
Well, it's hard to say,
Yeah.
but I mean, we're out of solar maximum. We're right now at the end of solar maximum, the beginning of the descending phase. But we often, and there's different categories. So it's like, okay, are we ramping up for solar activity? Are we ramping up for earthquake activity? Are we ramping up for volcanic activity? These are the three categories.
Mm.
Often during the descending phase, we do get really big solar flares and coronal mass ejections. It's certainly possible. And one good example that brings in a cosmic component is 2017 with Oumuamua, the first ever detected interstellar object. We only picked it up after its perihelion, its closest approach to the sun. And this was September of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And right in line with it, and it got very close to the sun. So it wasn't like a 3i Atlas, which was out beyond the orbit of Earth, which is close. But once you start to get within the orbit of Mercury, you're very close to the sun. Well, we had the biggest solar flares of solar cycle 24 right during that time frame. September 4th and September 10th or 11th were like the big days, but that whole time frame, the perihelion was the 9th of September, I believe. It's either the 7th or the 9th of September for Oumuamua. So it was perfect, and it was also in line with it because of the angle and trajectory. So, it's a cosmic coincidence. But that was a weak solar cycle. At the bottom, what's known as a Gleisberg cycle, which is an 88-year-long to 100-year-long variation in solar activity. We're at the bottom of that. Then all of a sudden, we get these gigantic solar flares that blasted off perfectly in time with Oumuamua, which is the first ever interstellar object. So it's all these outlier events clustered together. That's what we see. And once you get that, it's like, well, is it a coincidence? So right now, we are going down in solar activity, but we do have the potential for there to be these kind of one-off gigantic bursts. So we could have the biggest event of this solar cycle a year from now, 3 months from now, 2 years from now. That's certainly possible. As it relates to earthquake activity, what we generally see is that earthquake activity, like high magnitude activity globally, increases and it's at its highest on average during solar minimum versus solar maximum. Now, the fact that we had this magnitude 8.8 megaquake during solar maximum maybe isn't the best sign that this solar minimum is going to be quiet and calm. It may be very, very active. And I actually think this magnitude 6.9 quake in Chile that we both have referenced now, it kind of broke out of phase with the normal rhythm that we've been tracking, where the sun and earthquakes have been linked up. They've been linked with these coronal holes. These certain features on the sun seem to generate earthquakes, and we've been getting this like 28-day periodicity with the high magnitude quakes, exactly with the coronal hole magnetic field connections to the earth. It's a whole bunch of stuff, whatever. This broke that periodicity, and it did also, of course, happen to the minute with this gigantic far side explosion. So it broke one rhythm to establish another connection. But I'm kind of getting the sense that that might be the first quake, like kind of the first signal of this other wave that's coming in of just in general increased earthquake activity during solar minimum. And the same can be said for volcanic activity. That signal also exists. It's not huge, but it is a statistically significant signal that there is larger, more frequent volcanic events during solar minimum than there is during solar maximum. And to wrap, I just think that there's some aspect of solar maximum that impacts this rhythm that I'm in, these trends I'm describing, because if you have more energy loaded in on these longer time frames, I think that can create bigger events. So going back to solar cycle 24, the 2010s, there's tons of super high magnitude earthquakes during that solar minimum and that time frame in general between like 23, 24, 25. So the basically 21st century, bottom of the Gleisberg cycle. That means that we had that 50, 60 years of heavy solar loading from the peak of the Gleisberg cycle. So we're still kind of in that trough too. That's important to keep in mind. So there can definitely be some really big events coming up for the next few years. Does this mean that the Earth is going to end or the world's going to flip or explode or something? Like, no, I don't see any evidence of that. Though there are some interesting things happening, but I don't think that's the case. But yeah, I mean, this can actually affect people, like you were saying. Like, tsunami can hit and it can be destructive, it can be deadly. So we should not go straight to fantasy land with everyone dies, but we should also not just completely discount that these things, which some people seem to do, that these things matter and can knock houses off foundations and, have real world effects.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
where you are in Lake Tahoe, they've recorded like massive waves of energy coming in from landslides hitting the lake. So there can be these crazy events that occur depending on, that's like an earthquake on a fault that has like a 500-year reoccurrence interval, and that's like a 1 in 12,000 year event. They don't know exactly how often, but these things happen. So it's really wild.
Yeah, we had some pretty good earthquake activity not too long ago, close to this area. We even in this house we had some pretty good shaking. So it happens. I lived in Southern California for a long time as a Navy SEAL, and I remember being in my condo one time, and it shook like crazy. And I was like, wow, I knew there were some guys out diving. So I went in, and they were telling the guys that were in the boat, they're like, we didn't even know anything was going on. So top of the water, nothing. But the guys that were diving, they thought like a huge, ship had gone overboard over the top of them. They're like, what are those guys doing up on the surface? They're not protecting us, because they were like just bounced around like crazy in the water column. So it's really, really interesting, how these energies move through the environment.
Yeah, it's interesting. They must have been right near the bottom and had like the compressional waves stir things up and kind of shake them. But
Absolutely.
then
Yep.
because the shear waves don't pass through water, the boat was effectively unperturbed.
Yeah.
What year was that? Was that Northridge 91, or is this further back?
No, that was a little bit after that. Or
Okay.
no, it was before that. So Northridge came later. That was wow, that was incredible down in San Diego. it hit once, and I was like, wow, where was that? And then it was like early in the morning. I went back to sleep, and then it hit again, almost with the same intensity. But yeah, I don't know. So back when I was a Navy SEAL, back in maybe the early or late 2000 or 1990s, 98, something like that. So
Yeah, there's a rich history of earthquake activity that I'm really going into for Southern California.
mhm.
And one thing that's relevant, I mean, I'm in San Diego right now. One thing that's relevant there is that there's this bouncing between what's called the East California seismic zone, which
Mhm.
is basically like the Mojave Desert.
Yeah.
And this is on the eastern side of San Andreas. And then what happens is it's the activities focused there on like a decadal time frame. This could be like 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And then it bounces back over to the western side of the plate. And effectively, it's more San Andreas based. And it's this loading and rupture cycle, basically, that exists. And so all these earthquakes popping off. And right now, we're probably at the transition between all of them happening in the Mojave, because there's been big magnitude sevens out there over the past few decades, probably back to the western side, which is where all the population centers are. But all those big earthquakes, they load energy into the faults
Mhm.
nearby, and eventually then they get to that point where they rupture. So, all this information is so readily available now. So, like, I mean, kind of the way I see it is like there's all this info and research that a lot of amazing people have done. Not everyone has a brain for kind of seeing the big picture, and that's fine. Some people are really good at like getting, a crazy list of data in front of them and meticulously going through it and do all that stuff and send someone else to the psych ward. But we need people that do have kind of a big brain or a big picture view to take that data and then also pair it with what we're seeing now, because there's this idea that earthquake prediction is impossible, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy. But if we just keep telling ourselves that the 4 minute mile is impossible, then it's going to be impossible. If we keep telling ourselves that we can't, you know, forecast anything to some degree, then yeah, we're going to keep just blundering around. And so what I've been able to do fairly accurately is forecast global trends in seismicity. Location's difficult. Sometimes you get activity that's indicative of maybe this is a foreshock swarm, so then you can put a higher probability forecast for that location. You could look at strain accumulation rates, but a lot of this data is locked behind like research or government, basically like walls. It's not publicly accessible data, and it gets to a point where it's so detailed to have the big picture of everywhere on the globe simultaneously. It's probably impossible. Maybe AI systems will help with this in the future. I don't know, but that's really kind of where I am right now, is that I'm just doing as much as I can to research into all these different places, California, Italy, Japan, like everywhere.
Yep.
And then because I'm tracking it daily, just through that, you get a familiarity and a sense of these locations. And then you can start to use that beautiful gift from God, which is intuition, to kind of guide you that last little bit. I mean, as a Navy SEAL, I don't know what your training was like, your missions or anything, but I imagine that intuition was at least a little part of your success as a SEAL, just like feeling something was off or feeling that you need to go do this, whatever.
Oh yeah, definitely. Not everybody talks about it. There's a few of us that talk about it, and you see some people that have picked it up. I also remote viewed, and would see stuff that was coming as much as a week out. So
Yep.
there's that capability. We all have that, but like you're talking about, you have gone deep into some of these aspects, but you keep it very scientific, and I really really appreciate that. I know you have that thread of the intuitive side, which I think is ideal to guide you and bring you to some areas that might need a little bit more focus than you would otherwise give it. and then you see things. So I see that in your work quite a bit, and I think that's not everybody goes there. I've followed a lot of people over the years. Dutch Sense was one that I followed for quite a long time, and he seemed to have a somewhat scientific bent, although he doesn't have a scientific background or a science background like you do. But he was projecting fairly well. A deep earthquake, sometimes followed by a bigger, more shallower earthquake, and it moves around these fault zones and so forth. So you've taken, I think, to an incredible level your research is phenomenal, like you're talking about. Camp Gray, looks like it's going to blow, but it doesn't, and just shift somewhere else. And you've been able to follow, those shifts all around the world really well.
Yeah, Dutch Sense, I haven't met him, but we've chatted just a couple times on his live streams, and he says some nice things because I guess he watches my channel as well, and he's a perfect example of how tracking this stuff daily or at some regular frequency for a long duration of time teaches you a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how often he's in a research paper or 10 of them. I mean, probably every now and then. The guy posts every now on like Twitter, X, whatever, and he's not dumb. He's a smart guy.
Oh yeah.
But that component of tracking it frequently is so key. And see, that's where, and at a global sense too, because he's doing it for the globe. And so a lot of these people, they may be a mainstream scientist or whatever, they say, oh, it's not possible. Every time I see it, it's like they're hyper focused on understanding the transform faulting of northwestern China or something. It's like, okay, you're going to be the ultimate expert in these transform faults in northwestern China, but you're not going to at all see the global picture or have a sense of what's happening because you simply just haven't been tracking it, right? Yeah. If you're not going to the gym every day, you're probably not going to be jacked. So it's really that simple, but people want to fool themselves into being like an expert. They're not doing the work, or I don't know what it is. I mean, I kind of get it, but yeah, it's really just can you track this? Can you keep yourself humble by continuously researching and learning, and then just when you do get that little intuitive hit, can you listen to it and just actually follow it? It's just basically learning that system. And I through my, let's call it YouTube journey, I've seen how, and I think that Earth is directly, the consciousness of the Earth is directly guiding me in subtle ways, as she does with everybody in their own way. But my first video that I made was on the Schumann resonances, and it just happened to take off. Wow. And that's kind of what got everything going. If it just sat there and got no views, I probably wouldn't have kept doing YouTube, because when you're working and it took a lot of work. I still pushed through it, but I mean, if you're really doing a lot of work and not getting anything out of it, it's like, okay, what's the point? This isn't vibing or resonating.
Yeah.
So
you started your YouTube channel. I was just looking all the way back in 2013.
Yeah, I uploaded some a couple of videos from some just geophysical projects I worked on in 2013. But that Schumann video is my real first video, you could say. And that was released in February 2021. I did release a gardening video in November 2020. It's not there anymore. Because I'm also interested in gardening and all these things. So I didn't know what my channel was going to be. But it was.
You just muted.
Oh, I think maybe I was muted for a while.
No, just 4 minutes or so. You're good.
Oh, it just clicked randomly. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so I did a lot of GPR and magnetometer surveys and seismic surveys before I ventured off into YouTube land. And one thing I want to get doing again fairly soon is I would really like to be doing field work again, but this time at like sacred sites,
Ooh. Hmm.
and try to see if I can find energy lines or just
Ley
help
lines and stuff, huh? Yeah.
figure out what the deal is. I mean, there's something to some of these locations, as I'm sure you've probably visited a few of them at least.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's something to
Machu
that.
Picchu, been to Egypt several times. Yeah, lot of the sites here in the United States. So yeah, they're phenomenal. You can feel the energy in them, like you're talking about. So doing the research on that, that's a fantastic cause. Yeah, good job.
Well, we haven't done it yet, but
Yeah.
I hope
Okay,
to do that soon. It's a
good.
question of, I guess, getting some like bug out van and just like hitting the road
There
with a
you
whole
go.
bunch of gear and doing like 3 months of it or something. It should be a good time.
Sweet. Yeah. So your YouTube channel, you're approaching 1 million subscribers. That's impressive by any means. My channel, unfortunately, I got taken down a lot during the COVID, so I was trying to expose a lot of stuff. But
Hmm.
it's quite a challenge to keep people entertained, keep them interested, and so forth. So you've done an exceptional job. Your background. Give us a little bit more of your background. You're talking about being in the Boy Scouts and really loving the outdoors and so forth. And eventually, you got some your educational process brought you to a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, pretty normal background, I guess. I mean, I was just always super interested in science. So any science class I excelled in. I mean, I could very easily have gone into biology, could have gone into chemistry, any of these subjects. There's just something about exploring the world in a scientific way that kind of just resonates with my mind, I guess, like how it operates. But the big upgrade you could say is that I've learned to expand as well also into the right side of my brain,
Mm.
which is a more intuitive and kind of holistic, connected, empathetic side, because there's so much left brain dominance that exists right now. I believe it's the left brain that's the very analytical and focused. So I've helped to bring those together into balance, and traveling around a lot helped with that. I did a lot of traveling in 2021, 22, 23, just in general now. But yeah, I mean, I have to give a lot of thanks to I didn't go to like any special school. I mean, it was a great school, but it's public school. I have to give a lot of thanks to my teachers there. But more than that, I mean, I guess I just had to kind of give some thanks to to God, universe, whatever you want to call it, source, because it's really my curiosity that drives things more. So it didn't really matter what teacher I had for a subject. I just have an insatiable curiosity, and don't exactly know why, but it makes life exciting and keeps like I mean yesterday I was out walking and we had a quarter moon. Right now we're now waxing gibbous phase. We're about to have our full moon on the 31st.
Mm.
But I looked up and it's the daytime, so the moon is pretty nicely illuminated, and the sun, since it's quarter moon, the sun is getting ready to set, but it's not setting yet. But it was the trippiest thing. I mean, it looked like the Death Star was in orbit around our planet. It literally could have been. I saw the moon for the first time, effectively. I felt like I saw the moon for what it was for the first time. I was like, what is this? And because you could see the mares, the oceans, the dark, the dark basaltic plains and everything.
Incredible.
And the fact that it was at that phase and had the geometry with the sun gave all of a sudden now this larger perspective of it wasn't just the Earth Moon system, it was the Earth Moon Sun system. And see, the moon is about the size of the inner core. The two are about equivalent in diameter.
I didn't
So
even
when
know
you're
that. Wow. Mm.
yeah, it's an interesting little tidbit. Now the inner core is much more massive than the moon, but if in terms of just its density is a lot higher. But if you look at the moon, effectively you're seeing like the size of Earth's inner core.
Wow.
So there's just all these, it kind of all hit me at once because I just recently I've been on a new research phase. So all this info has just been like moving around in my synapses. And it just looked like so high definition and
Mm,
just real in a new way. Like I unlocked some new, like the blur went away on the picture. I was like, whoa, okay. And our system's unique, the fact that we do have this one moon that we somehow captured
yeah.
because based off of pretty good understandings of how the solar system formed, but huge grain of salt with that in general, we probably had a natural satellite system like Jupiter or Saturn or Uranus that then got scattered as a result of the capture of our moon,
Mm,
which is kind of an interesting idea to think about. But we have this very bizarre system here on Earth that we take for granted, and like I was joking around. I think it was the same day, just before I had that kind of aha moment. I saw these two girls walking, and one of them had like all these like mystical, magical tattoos or something. So she looked a little witchy, and so I stopped on my bike. I was like, "Where's the moon? Where's the moon? Where's the moon?" And they were like, "Ah!" They couldn't find the moon, which is fine because I mean it's like small and you have to find it. But most people though would totally fail that, right? They would have no clue. They're like, "What? Like, is it a full moon right now?" Like, so they were at least kind of looking around and they knew that it was out. But there's this huge disconnect that exists between normal people and like what's actually what's actually happening on this planet.
yeah, definitely. And I remember my wife and I, we went to Lake Titicaca, and we were staying on this, I think, the island of the moon. And we were at the top of it. There's a little house up there, and so we had it to ourselves. And we went out, and the Milky Way was just unbelievable how bright it was. There was, no other lighting around that would dim it, and it was just you, almost like you could touch it. The stars were so bright, and you could see like the just millions, trillions of stars. It's just incredible. So it really is humbling when you see something like that. And just before that, we'd seen there was like a thunderstorm that had gone across a part of the lake. So we saw the whole thunderstorm, and then it cleared, and we saw all those stars. Wow, it's just magical, beautiful, beautiful times.
Yeah, I mean, experience like that. We have this. I mean, we've been connecting this way for hundreds of thousands of years, like
Yeah,
millions of years. So it's only recently that this big like resistor has been put in between this natural
right.
connection between everything.
Good point.
So it just requires just a little bit of effort to go to this sort of locations because nowadays most people have light pollution
Hmm.
or you need to spend, kind of 10 minutes just looking at like the lunar phases for the next month and then making an effort to, okay, every single day I'm going to kind of see where it is and try to find the moon and understand the rise and set times. I mean, I get these waves of comments sometimes where they all take on a similar theme. It's interesting. It's going to be emails, comments, just correspondence, whatever. And there was a wave that went through maybe like 6 months ago where everyone thought the moon was like veering off course or something. Like the moon has never been this position in the sky before. What's it doing? But it's a fairly complex equation between what season it is, and the tilt angle of the Earth, and therefore its direction towards the sun, and then also the moon has inclination with its orbit, 5.15%. So where are the lunar nodes, and is it going to be at its most inclined for a full moon, or it will actually be at its least inclined for a full moon, so it just skims over the top? This creates a whole ever-changing kind of picture of where the moon may be at any given moment. Or just tracking, you have, for example, a new moon. And that means that at sunset, you have the sun and the moon setting simultaneously. You're not going to see the moon because on the day of a new moon, you're simply not going to see it. It's too close to the sun. But then the next day, you'll have the sunset and then the moon will set right afterwards. 2 days later, you'll have the moon, you'll have the sunset, and then you'll have like a very thin crescent moon up for maybe an hour, and then it'll set. So if you then use that time of sunset as your like your kind of tracking point, you'll see the moon progressively get higher and higher and higher in the sky for sunset, and then eventually it'll actually flip, and it'll start to get closer and closer to the eastern horizon, and then 2 weeks after that new moon, you'll have the sunset, and then the moon will rise, and so you can track it this way. There's a lot of different ways to track. You just simply have to realize that there may be some benefit to you to do this and to actually do it. But if you just randomly see it once every 3 months, and then you're following people maybe that are telling you the world's going to end, or the moon is, I don't know what the moon is, but there's a lot of crazy stuff out there. Right. Then you're going to be like, what's happening with the moon? Like, we're all going to die. It's like, it's winter and it's at low inclination and you haven't been tracking it, it's cool. Like, they're at this point where they recognize that there's something cool there, but not jumping to these crazy conclusions, I think, is important. Instead, it's like, okay, well, what can I do? And here's a list of moon phases, and let's learn a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And getting that close to the star systems and so forth, and the moon, I think that's really important for everybody, because if you look at the past, they were really into it. You go to all the ancient sites, and they all have some kind of astronomical vision to have it carved in rocks and so forth, in their pyramids and so forth. And then down in South America, they actually have observatories that are still down there. It's like, but they're ancient and they're falling apart. No one knows anything about them, how they were used, and crazy. So a lot of this stuff, like we're talking about, is lost. And getting it back, I think you're moving us in that direction, to get it back, to have that childlike wonder, to explore and find out all these different things. Now, you do travel quite a bit. I've seen you in Hawaii when the volcano's been going off. We just had Mauna Loa just had a huge earthquake in it. And what are your thoughts about that?
Oh, like just a few days ago? You mean on the western side?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that was a weird earthquake because it was felt so widely across the islands, even to Niihau, the Forbidden Island, like west of Kauai. Wow. And they felt it there as well. Now, I looked at some of the earthquake records where we have this "do you feel it" information, because people, they send in their responses. We don't have that from the 1950s or something. Like, maybe I could look through some Army report, right? But just in terms of quickly getting a bit of information, only the recent, let's say, 20 years has that "do you feel it" information. So the 6.9 that struck on the eastern side of the Big Island, not the western side. Of course, the Hawaiian island chains go to the west. The 6.9 that struck in 2018 didn't have nearly as many "did you feel it" responses as the magnitude 6.
Wow.
Is different side of the island, different depth, but it's also nearly 32 times more energy. So you think just through simply like the sheer power of it being bigger, maybe it would be felt more widely to the west, but it wasn't. So this earthquake had some unusual properties to it. There was a 6.2 that also occurred north of the epicenter, but it was like northwest of the Big Island, just off the coast, but just a little bit. That one was also felt going to the west to Oahu, Kauai, but it didn't have as many "did you feel it" responses as this magnitude 6, and it's also a 6.2, and that one was even in a better location, perhaps to radiate energy across the plate. So, I can't say it's like the most odd thing ever, but certainly bizarre. And it's speaking to this solar volcanic cycle, because, and I've just recently made some videos on this, but the the Pu'u'o'o eruption from 83 to 2018, which ended with the massive rift eruption, Leilani Estates, and then the magnitude 6.9. That was the biggest eruption from Kilauea, I guess, in 200 plus years.
Yeah.
And now we've had 47 fountaining episodes at the Halema Uma'u crater, which is the main crater for Kilauea, nearly twice as fast as the lava fountain episodes that occurred for the beginning of this long 35-year Pu'u'o'o eruption for Kilauea. So maybe they're apples to apples, maybe they're apples to oranges. We'll only find out years from now when we have all the data.
Yeah.
But the fact that we did see this big eruptive cycle, and then the 6.9, and then immediately, and then this big caldera collapse at Kilauea, it's starting to fill back up, having tons of fountain eruptions, and we see that volcanic activity at Hawaii. I did this analysis myself. Volcanic activity at Hawaii does increase a little bit during solar minimum versus maximum. We're going into solar minimum. It's like, okay, maybe we're building up to something. Then this magnitude 6 hits just a few days ago. Kilauea was having a pretty regular rhythm for these eruptions of about every 10 days. She was doing about 9 hours of lava fountaining. Now episode 48, which was expected to begin today, is getting pushed back because now the inflation tilt data for Kilauea is going through these random drops. It's done this twice now. So, I mean, it's not like we haven't seen this sort of thing before, but the moment that earthquake occurred, I was like, something's going to change at Kilauea because of that shock wave hitting the system. Clearly that was a big shock wave. That's the point of all the did you feel it to the west. Clearly it's a big shock wave in all directions. For whatever reason, it had a lot of energy in that component, you could say. Because it wasn't just up and down motion like some earthquakes. There was a strong sideways component to it, which could blast it off that way. So now we're seeing Kilauea with the inflation of the caldera behaving differently. And so it's like this earthquake wasn't necessarily volcanic in nature. Maybe, but in general, it's all volcanic because the hot spot is creating the islands to begin with. But you see how then it looped back and it was able to influence the volcanic system through this earthquake that occurred that wasn't necessarily volcanic in nature. It didn't, impend some imminent eruption, though I think Hawaii's got more coming. And maybe this is actually start of a larger cycle, and Pu'u'o'o may have just been kind of like the first big wave from that. I mean, it's certainly possible. So this is why it's important to track this, because several hundred homes were destroyed in 2018, Leilani Estates. I met someone who was there. Her house was spared, but basically one night she woke up and there was just a sudden fissure throwing magma, shooting magma up into the air hundreds of feet, like just a few hundred feet away from her house. And for 4 months, she lived like that with the gas and the earthquakes, the rumbling, and with the fear that any moment, like everything could get destroyed. Yeah. So we really need to, not saying other people aren't taking this seriously, but there's this mental block about seeing the larger connection between the sun, the planets, and the earth, and also the cosmic environment, because that has been programmed into people for a long time now, as we discussed early on. And astrology is in many ways kind of like the root of that, because it gives you a really big glimpse into the mechanism of reality. You can say it's not everything, of course, but it's like a pretty big glimpse into it. So if there's anyone that wants to disconnect you from that for their own profit and to control things, they're going to do so. And that has been the case, in my opinion. And so there's this programmed belief that this stuff's all nonsense. So a lot of these people which have good intentions and want to help people, they're fundamentally blocked and limited because they can't get past the astrology's nonsense. And so then they're going to have a less of an ability. They're not going to be as good at forecasting this stuff because the big picture is often what's driving what's happening when and where. So it's really important societally. That's the point, right? It's like important at a societal level if you care for your fellow human beings to like look at all the things and apply that scientific mindset and also that a little bit of intuition to help guide you whichever way spirit is going to give you the answer. Because I think also Earth and the sun and God and all the guys, right, want us to be more empowered and actualized and live on this planet peacefully. And Mother Earth's going to keep doing earthquakes and stuff. But, you know, I had a dream that an earthquake was occurring right before that Hawaii quake. There was
Wow.
people in Hawaii that commented when I was live streaming or whatever. They're like, yeah, I had a feeling something was coming that night. So she sometimes Earth talks very directly to people to let them know things
Oh,
are
yeah.
coming because she doesn't want to hurt them, but she's got to do whatever this earthquake needs to do. Or
Yeah.
this is what I believe.
Yeah. It's frequency energy and vibrational energy and so forth, and people pick up on it. Especially like you're very focused on it. The coronal holes. I've never seen any. I've never even thought about coronal holes, and since I've watched your work, I can see that the coronal holes definitely have an impact. Weather, earthquakes, volcanic activity, you name it. Coronal holes, which you've covered quite well, has an impact. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I'll pull one up right now for people to see, just so they can see it. I'll put it behind me.
Nice.
And I can just quickly turn myself off. These coronal holes are the dark spots on the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And those are areas where the outermost atmosphere of the sun, which is all plasma, the fourth state of matter, is deficient. So there's not that much plasma there. And that affects the light flux that we receive, and they have a special magnetic field to them, and it gets they emit these high-speed streams of solar wind. So it's very, very interesting. But yeah, this solar cycle specifically has had these big trans-equatorial coronal holes, so cutting through the solar equator, meaning that they very nicely hit us with their special solar wind, their high-speed streams of solar wind, low density, and the magnetic field connection. And so that has been, I've tracked that for a while. Not necessarily because I went into this knowing about coronal holes, but just because we saw over and over and over and over this connection.
Yeah.
And a great example of this is back in March of just last year, 2025, when we had this gigantic coronal hole on the sun, like really massive coronal hole, transequatorial right there. And at the same time that connected to us and it went geo-affected everything, we had Mercury and Venus directly in front of the Earth, both performing what are known as inferior conjunctions.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we use astrology lingo, a cazimi. But Mercury and Venus can do inferior conjunctions or superior. Superior would be when they're on the other side of the sun. So they were both in line. So it was a Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth alignment. You have that coronal hole at the magnetic field connecting all of them together. And then on March 28th, we had a big storm from that, big geostorm on like the 24th or 25th. Then on the 28th, we had the magnitude 7.7 earthquake strike Myanmar, which was very destructive. On that same day, and there was an aftershock, a 6.7, I believe. There was also two earthquakes that struck a mid-ocean ridge, a 6.6 and a 6.1 or a 6.2. So it was clearly a seismic burst. And in fact, that was the beginning of a bigger seismic burst that went into April for 2025. But at the same time as that magnitude 7.7, just like what we had yesterday, there was a huge solar flare and coronal mass ejection on the limb of the sun. And so it did not launch the solar storm to hit us, but the timing was that we get this gigantic solar flare, just solar explosion, basically. One of the biggest of the solar cycle, right? Definitely in that top list. It went off like a Death Star beam or something. And then we had that magnitude 7.7. So it was one of these clusterings of outlier events. You have this outlier planetary geometry. You have this outlier gigantic coronal hole. You have this outlier gigantic solar explosion. You have this outlier deadliest and most destructive earthquake of 2025. It wasn't the megaquake in Russia. It was the 7.7 in Myanmar. And on the 6th of December in last year, 2025, we had the Hubbard Glacier earthquake, Alaska. That also occurred to the minute with a solar flare, same as yesterday. Myanmar wasn't to the minute, but it was like very, very close in time. It was like within a couple hours or something like that. So it's just, you pay attention and it just blows your mind. And you're still trying to figure out how we can utilize this observational data to make better forecast for when we should be maybe expecting things to happen, and therefore to be prepared a little bit more wherever you are. That's like the next frontier. But clearly, observationally, we're being given the down low all the time. Like, yeah, it's happening. Just pay attention. You'll see it.
Yeah, fantastic. And so, wow, great, great information. Thanks for, sharing everything. You have a website and a store, earthevolution.com.
Yeah, we have a variety of, there's a little bit of channel merchandise like sweatshirts and shirts and whatever. And we also have a variety of holistic wellness products. So it's all made by people. For example, the tea blends are all organic. They're mixed and made in Pennsylvania. I used to do it myself, but then my dad's helping out now.
Nice.
We also have some other products from other people. So you'll have to, if you place an order, I'll refund you, but we'll send some tea your way if you guys are into that, or the coffee, whatever you want.
Definitely. Yeah.
I'd like to do that for guest appearances. That's always fun. So that's a resource for people. They're really super high quality because everything you buy in stores now, not everything, but a lot of it's just like the dust at the bottom of a barrel. It's unfortunate. So this is United States only.
Okay. So your boom shakalaka. I love that. That's fun when you bring that up.
Yeah, I don't really know. Well, I was trying to get like a good intro for a video one day, and I was just like banging my head against the wall. I don't know why I was struggling so much, but I was. And then because I have my thing recording, and I'll just then when I edit my video, cut out all the prior takes beforehand, and then all of a sudden it's like boom shakalaka, guys, we had this huge thing happen or whatever. And I decided to keep that one, and it just stuck. That's the one thing that stuck very, very well. So I appreciate you and your support and viewership. And, there's people across the whole range that they know very little, but they enjoy it. And then there's people like yourselves who, you've been to all these or a lot of these energy sites multiple times. You've been studying this for decades, and you're also watching, supporting, and that helps hold this resonance. That's really changing things quite quickly. And my job is really just to make sure I don't screw it up and just to be a good relayer of information, right? It doesn't need to be any more complex than that. Have a little bit of fun because people, you don't want them to be bored nowadays, but you don't need to go crazy or wild. Just to have a good delivery of information because, I'm not really, I'm doing all this research, everything that's cool, great, whatever. Other people are doing that too. I think the bigger picture here is that I'm tapping into a group collective resonance of information and understanding and sharing that. And so it's not just my own efforts. It's really just this collective resonance, standing wave, Schumann thing, whatever, that we all are building together is a critical component to me even being able to do these presentations, I think.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Fantastic. Such a treat to have you on, Stefan. Thanks so much for coming on. Again, we're following your work, promoting you as much as we can. I put little tidbits of your stuff out there all the time and link it to some of the stuff that I'm following and doing as well. Because it seems like we're both kind of moving in the same direction for a lot of stuff. So thanks so much for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you.